my YouTubers, don't forget to comment below, like, share, and subscribe. Most importantly, click the notification bell to receive all of Sharleen Clarke's podcasts.
Welcome, listeners, to another week's episode of the Inspirational Saturdays show with your host, Sharleen Clarke. We continue to explore the topic of cancer, given that October is observed as Breast Cancer Awareness Month. And so today you will hear from another guest of mine, her experience. That is out of the way. Today, we are going to be hearing from a mother who has lost her son to cancer, a mother who knows what the pain feels like to bury a child, a mother who knows what the pain of cancer looks like. We are going to be hearing from Trudy and Jackson. Trudy Ann has a very powerful story to share with us today.
Now this is Pat and Tony live and direct from Kingston, Jamaica, endorsing Supreme Vibes Radio. I don't know, a big thing, yeah? Supreme Vibes is on your radio. Whoa, we're on your radio. Whoa, play the rubber dub style and the real reggae music. Supreme Vibes Radio, endorsed by I, Pat and Tony. Flash it.
Let us welcome Trudy. Trudy, welcome to the Supreme Vibes Radio, and thank you for making it the Inspirational Saturday show. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me, Sharleen. It's a pleasure being here.
Okay, great. Let's talk a little bit about you and your children. That's where I want to start from the beginning. So you're a mother of 3. Tell me about that experience a little bit.
Okay, it's like any other experience, I would say. The joys of motherhood, the pains, the tears, all that comes with motherhood. But it's overall, as we normally would say, it hurts sometimes, but if you had a chance, you'll do it all over again. So, it's an enjoyable, sometimes, based on my situation, a crying moment. But if I had the chance, I'll do it all over again.
Wouldn't we? And so it's one daughter, 2 sons.
That's correct.
And the daughter is the eldest.
Yes, the daughter is the eldest. And then I have a middle child who is 11. And my youngest was 4 at the time.
So you say your youngest was 4 at the time. And this is RASHAUN we're talking about.
That is correct. That is RASHAUN.
Okay.
He's younger.
Right. So let me talk a little bit about RASHAUN, because this program is really about him, about the struggles that you went through. Tell me a little bit about RASHAUN. We want to get that sort of connection. Who was he? I mean, give us the details about your baby RASHAUN.
RASHAUN was the child who brought light into a room. Not that the others didn't, but he was that child who you would, if you were meeting him for the very first time, you would say, who is that child? He was always jovial. He's always laughing. He's the one to come and say, Mommy, I love you, and give you a kiss on the cheek. Or he would come and hug you and said, it's time to go sleep. Come and lie down with me. He's such a loving, sweet child. He was full of light. I mean, there's so much more I could say, but he was just a child who made it all worthwhile. He had so much light in him, something that made you say, wow, that's the type of child he was.
Right. And how did his siblings treated him? What kind of relationship he had with his siblings?
Well, funny enough, the eldest and the middle child could not get along. For the life of me, they were always at each other's throat with something. It was always something else. This one getting on that one nerve and that one getting on this one nerve. But RASHAUN was the one who was the peacemaker, because he got along well with both. He would see them quarreling and get in the middle, and everybody would be happy after that. He was like the one who you would say cry peace each time there was the war about to begin. The relationship between he and his siblings was very good, even though he was the youngest. They had such a lovely relationship. I couldn't even tell you that. I'm not saying he didn't have his fair share of bad moments, and throwing tantrums, but he was the peacemaker.
He was a peacemaker. What sort of things RASHAUN liked? I mean, as a little baby, what sort of things we talk about?
Well, he would say, Mommy, when I grow up, I want to be a firefighter. Can you get me a fire engine? And we got him this fire engine, and oh my God, you don't want to see the light in his eyes. His fire engine was everything. He wanted the hat, he wanted the jacket, everything to be a fireman. And it's ironic because his dad is a cop and his brother also wanted to be a cop, but he was always talking about being a firefighter. So that's the type of toys he played with. Apart from that, he loved football. He really adored football as well. So those are the two things I could say he loved. He was also that little cartoon with the dogs. I can't remember right now, but he loved that. I'm trying to remember, but it's not coming to me right now. But he loved that cartoon with the little puppies, and he loved the firefighter one. I can't remember.
Is it Paw Patrol? Is it Paw Patrol?
Paw Patrol. Yes, he was such a Paw Patrol fan. Everything for him was Paw Patrol. I can't even remember his last birthday. It was a Paw Patrol theme all the way because he was such a Paw Patrol person.
Right.
Yeah, so those are basically the toys that he loved.
Okay, and it is quite interesting that at such a young age he knew already what he wanted to become. He knew what type of career he wanted to get into.
Yes, he was. I don't know. There was just something different about him looking back now, but he was so keen on the things he wanted. He did not. If he said he wanted a toy, he didn't just say a toy. He specifically told you what he wanted. You know, and even with going to school, he didn't do much of school because at such a young age he became so sick. So I think he did like a couple months of school. But even in the hospital, he had his tablet, and we thought he would have been watching cartoons and stuff like that. And one day he just said to me, he said, "Mom, you know, I can say my ABCs." And I said, "What? You can't say your ABCs?" He said, "Yeah, I can say my ABCs. I learned it on the tablet." And he was so excited. And I said, "Okay, let me hear you say your ABCs." And he said it from A to Z. And I was very impressed because I know I didn't have that headspace, that frame of mind to, you know, be teaching him ABCs at the time because we were going through such a trauma with him being sick and we didn't have at the hospital all the time. But he taught himself ABCs and he was like, "The next thing I'm gonna do, I'm gonna learn my colors." And he was so enthusiastic about life. It was such a fun thing to see him, and he radiated when he talked about how he learned his ABCs and, you know, little stuff like that.
Right. Tell me about school and RASHAUN. You said that he was in school. What type of student was he, and how did he relate with his classmates?
Well, as I said, he didn't do much of school. I think he did like a couple months of school. But from the report that I got, he did very well. He was keen to learn. He reacted well with his classmates. If anybody and him had any problem, any trouble, he would go to the teacher. I think he gave his fair share of trouble, which wasn't much. You know, I'm not gonna say, he was this little angel, but you know, boys could, you know. But I think he was responsible somewhat, and he got along with everybody because the reports that I got, there wasn't anything to be concerned about to say, well, he wasn't participating. He participated. He wanted to go to school. He's not that type of child who would cry and don't want to leave. He wasn't clingy. He wanted to go, you know. So I can't really say much, but from what I learned, he did well.
Okay. And you said that he didn't do much of school because he was ill. But before
Yes.
we really get into the illness per se, tell me, how did you find out that he was ill? How did you realize? Because based on what you're saying, this was an active child. Now tell me,
Yes.
how did you find out that he became ill?
Okay, so he went to school as always one day, and the teacher said to me, he seemed a little lethargic. He was sleeping in class. So she wanted to know if he was sleeping at night. So I said, yes, he goes to bed at 8, so he's fine. So I remember him getting really sick at school, and he was vomiting. He had a temperature, and she called me, come and get him because he doesn't look like he's feeling well. We got him and we took him to the doctor. The doctor said, oh, it's just a bug from school and he'll be fine.
Right.
Yes, he was fine. He didn't continue with the vomiting. But after that, I realized he wasn't eating and his clothes didn't fit him as well. They started to fall off. So I'm like, what's going on?
Right.
So being concerned, I went back to the doctors and I said, he's losing weight. What's going on? So the doctors assured me that when a child is growing up, it's normal for them to lose weight. So just give him some vitamins and see what happens. He started to eat less. The weight loss was one of the things I realized. But even though I was taking him to the doctor, in the back of my head, I started saying, oh, but this does not look normal. There was just something bugging me about this onset of not eating and sleeping so much that wasn't sitting right with me. So I took him to the doctor the day. That is a regular general practitioner that I took him to. And I said, something is not right. And the doctor said, I know you're worried, but remember, this is a growing boy. It's just a growth spurt. He'll be okay. And by the evening day, I said, no, something is wrong. And I called his dad and said, listen, I'm taking RASHAUN to the pediatrician because that is who I think we should see at this point because something is going off.
Right.
I went to the pediatrician and I explained to her my concern. And she said to me, okay, I understand that you went to the doctor this morning. And being the person she is, she said, listen, doctors are not magicians. And I said, yes, I understand that, but there is something wrong. It's just that mommy instincts, keep on nagging me. So she said to me, list the symptoms for me and we're going to deal with the symptoms one by one.
Right.
Well, I listed symptoms and she prescribed stuff for us. Said that she's going to attack the lethargic. Him being lethargic. She's going to attack him not eating. And the weight loss should be okay because once he starts eating again, his weight should come back. She said, okay, buy these medications and come back in 2 weeks. Lo and behold, his medications, he started eating. He was upbeat again. He wasn't sleeping as much. And we took him back to school.
Right. She
She also recommended as well that we do, no, I'm sorry. That is not that time. But we took him back in 2 weeks. But like a couple days before I took him back, I noticed a couple bulges in his tummy.
Right.
So I'm like, what is this? Because I've never seen it before.
Right.
So when I went, I pointed them out to her and said, he's eating, he's not lethargic again, he's upbeat, but these bulges I've noticed in his tummy. And she said, well, based on what I'm seeing, it should be an hernia, but not to be concerned. You're going to have to do an ultrasound to really see what's going on.
Right.
And we did the ultrasound the Friday morning. By the Friday afternoon, I got a call from her, and she said to me, hi, how are you? I said, I'm fine. She said, I need to see you in my office on Monday. Is that okay? And when you're coming, please bring your husband with you.
Oh, wow.
In the back of my head, it's like, I can do this by myself. I don't see why I need him to come.
Right. Oh, wow.
But anyways, I called him and I said to him, I said, doctor said we need to come on Monday. I said, it can't be anything serious, because if it was serious, she'd say, come right now. So we were kind of banking on that. But anywho's, we went to the lab. We picked up the ultrasound report. Being me, I ain't carrying no pussy, no bag. So I opened the letter. And when I opened the letter, it said possible lymphoma. So, I mean, all my senses went.
Did you know exactly what lymphoma was then when you read it?
To be honest, I knew what lymphoma was, but when I read it, it's like I wasn't seeing what I'm seeing. Right. This could not be. They must have made a mistake somewhere. And I started to Google lymphoma because I knew what it was, but at that time, I lost all my senses, all my vocabulary, everything was like kaput. It was gone. I was in another zone. I wanted to pee. I had chills, everything. Now, this child was in my lap. We were driving to the doctor's office. Right. And when I went, she said to me, I'll be right with you. Come in and have a seat. Would you like something to drink? I'm like, what is going on? Why is she offering me something to drink? And she saw the look on my face and she said, Mommy, you read the letter, right? I said, yes, I did. She said, I knew you would. And she said, we're going to have to talk about what you saw in the letter. But before you do, let us pray. And that is where it all started.
Right. So at that moment, that was the moment you knew that he had cancer.
Yes, I knew.
The doctor found out that you read the report and said that they wanted to speak with you. Well, she wanted to speak with you about what you saw in the report. What was the discussion like? And you also stated that your husband was with you. Let us continue from there.
Yeah. Well, I'm trying to think back right now to really see my frame of mind, what it was like. And I really can't say how I was. I was like, somebody please pinch me when this terrible nightmare is over.
Right.
Doctor, you could never be talking about my son. Something went wrong. That's the wrong ultrasound they looked at. This is the wrong child you're talking about. No, you are wrong. I was in disbelief. It was like something from a movie. It just did not feel real. However, when the words came, she said, it's possible lymphoma. It was like I started to cry. The tears were coming. My son was there and he was like, Mommy, why are you crying? Mommy, don't cry. And he was wiping my tears. And I was like, baby, if you only understood this death sentence that is being passed on you. I said, God, how could it be? How could it be? You are wrong. Something. I started to think, I'm like, God, what did I do? Is it something that I did why I'm getting this punishment? Those are my thoughts. And it was like, she said to me, we can do this. We will never leave you. But at this moment, we're going to have to do some blood work. I mean, right away. They took him from us and they started to get his blood work ready. She said to me, we have to send him off to the hospital. He's going to be admitted. She tried to outline everything as best as she could, but it's like it was coming through my right ear and going out my left ear, because in my head, it could not be my child.
How old was RASHAUN at this time?
He was 3 years old at this point. He was 3
years old. And at this very moment, at the doctor's office, you had to be preparing yourself and your child for admission to the hospital.
Yes, we had to be prepared. Because he was feeling better, she said we had a couple days because there's paperwork where she said, we could go to Children's or we could go to the university hospital. She said, Mommy, I'm just going to pick one. I said, Doc, I can't even deal with this. I said, just pick one and just let us go. She said, okay, the blood work will be ready in a couple of days. And as soon as it's ready, the paperwork will be ready for you to take to the hospital. Within those couple of days, he took a turn for the worst, which was he stopped eating again. He was running a temperature. He was just laying down. We had to call her back because by this we had her number. We had her on speed dial because as far as I'm concerned, this death sentence, we need a doctor on call.
Right.
I called her and I said to her, I said, Doc, he's not feeling well. I think something is up. She said, okay, come to the hospital because she is connected to a hospital. Right. She said, come to the hospital. We went to the hospital and she said, you have to get him to the hospital today. It was in the afternoon. So she said, you have to get him into the hospital today. I said, are you kidding? Like right now, there's nothing you can do. She said, no, this is beyond us. You have to get him so he can start getting treatment.
Right. Right.
I can't tell you. My breath went away. I was still walking, still breathing, but I was a zombie because this is just something I could not bear. I could not deal with.
So a moment, Trudy. How did you break this news to his sibling, and how did they take it? Just before we get to the hospital, when you went home, how did you break this news to his sibling, and what was their reaction?
Well, we went home, and they knew we had to go to the hospital because they knew he was sick, but they did not know to what extent. Right. So everybody was in the family room, and they were like, "What happened? What the doctor said?" And I was crying like a baby, just the same. And my other son said, "Mommy, why are you crying? You love Christ, so." Because he's very outspoken, but my daughter was more quiet. She was watching my eyes, my reaction, and she knew something was wrong, and she started to cry. And she said, I don't want to hear. And I said, well, you have to hear. I said, brother, cancer, and we have to take him to the hospital. She said, no, mommy, they are wrong. They're just not my brother. And it was a moment where I wouldn't say they alone, but we all were unconsolable. And I can tell you, this is one of the worst nightmares for any parent, to see your child crying or hurting, and there's nothing you can do. Nothing. It's like you are so helpless. You're like, you question yourself. You're like, why is this happening? Why can't I fix this? Because that's a mommy's job or a daddy's job to fix a kid's boo-boo and make it better, if you get what I'm saying.
Right. But this boo-boo was out of control, out of your hands.
Yes, it was out of my hands, and there's nothing I could do. The middle child, he did not break down right away. I think he kind of internalized things. He would have little tantrums here and there, but he did not say anything with regards to the illness. Right. He kind of played around it for a while, not for long, but for a while. He pretended as if everything was okay, but the bigger one, she was the one who broke down. It really, really broke her. I mean,
because for her, she understood more of what was going on.
Yes, she understood more. And I can't tell you, Sharleen, how it made me feel, but we were in a state of shock, hurt. It's just heartbreaking.
Share with our listeners about the experience at the hospital with RASHAUN. So now you have to take him to the hospital. He's now admitted.
Yeah, we took him in, and there are a bunch of tests that have, even though they said, oh, he has lymphoma, There are a bunch of tests that had to be done, markers that have to be found to say, yes, this is cancer and what type of cancer it is. What happened was that we were admitted at the university hospital, but it took them a little while to find out what it was, because at
University Hospital, and this is in Jamaica.
Yes.
You were in the Jamaica at this time.
Yes. And they were kind of not sure what the cancer was at the time until later on in the end, because to treat cancer, you have to know what it is and then to know the type of medicine that this will need to treat it. So we were there kind of waiting on them to tell us what it was, and we didn't know until like a month or so after that we found that it was not lymphoma, but neuroblastoma.
I will not even try to repeat. Could you repeat? Can you repeat it for our listeners?
It was neuroblastoma.
Okay, and what's the difference between this new diagnosis and the prior?
Okay, so lymphoma is more in the lymph nodes. His neuroblastoma affected his kidneys, his spleen, the liver, in the tummy function. That's where it was. It caused his tummy to be somewhat enlarged. Like it was swelling up in his tummy. And that's the difference between the two type of cancers.
Okay. But and so they recognized that this was a more serious case of cancer.
Yes.
What was their procedure? What was their plan for RASHAUN?
Okay. Being that it was a cancer that affected the adrenaline glands per se, they wanted to go in with aggressive chemotherapy. Listen, all this is new to me. Right. I am not a medical person. I know nothing about medicine. But being that my son is sick, it's a must that I know what is going on. So they wanted to go in with aggressive chemotherapy, then surgery, then radiation. That was their plan. And the first go at chemotherapy, because his tummy was swelling up so much, it would eventually cause his kidneys to fail, which could be fatal to him, and also it could cut his circulation off to his lungs. So they had to go in as quickly as possible with the chemotherapy. Right. Now, when I was there, I knew nothing about chemotherapy drugs, but I met other mothers who shared the same thing that we were going through, a child with cancer. And they said to me, well, your child, they said he has cancer, or has cancer for 2 years, for 3 years, and these are the type of cancer. I even learned of one, rhabdomyosarcoma. These names were like, I'm like, what is this? But anyways, they taught me, like, this is what you need to know. You need to know that your child is taking. You need to know the side effects. You need to know everything about your child. You need to know what the child needs. It's like, I'm going to be the doctor, and the doctors are going to be my assistants, you know? That is basically what happened, because I had to learn everything. So from there, we went into our first round of chemotherapy, which was scary, because I'm like, chemo is gonna kill him. Gonna die at the first go at chemotherapy. But you know, I had my circle, which is very important. You have to have that circle, that circle who you can lean on, who you can call on, who will check on you, who would say, don't worry, your God is gonna pull through, because there are gonna be times when you're gonna want to give up. It's not you going through it, but it's just as hard for you as a child who's going through it.
Right. So at this time, did RASHAUN really know by this time, understood what was going on with him? Now he's doing chemotherapy. Did he understand what was happening?
Well, Rashawn understood he was sick. And the thing is, he's not the child who you can try to play around. You have to give it to him straight, because then he will understand. Because if he doesn't understand, he's not gonna stop until you tell him what's going on. So we had to tell him. I said, Rashawn, you have cancer. The part that we did not tell him is that you can die.
Okay.
We left that out completely, but we are like, the doctors are working, you're gonna be better, but you are sick and you have to stay in the hospital. There were nights when he would cry, he would say, Mommy, I want to go home. But we like, because we want you to get better, you have to stay in the hospital. So he knew
a little bit of what was going
pardon
on.
me?
He knew a little bit of what was going on, as much as he wanted.
He knew a little bit. He even learned that, he knew what an IV was. He knew what he was getting in his IV. He was on top of things, just like his mom.
How long did he stay in the hospital for the first round of chemotherapy and observation?
Okay, so he was in the hospital for like 2 months.
Okay, so he was in for 2 months.
Yes, the first go. He was not allowed to leave. Even after he did the first set of treatment, he was not allowed to leave. He stayed in there because at one point his kidneys started to fail, which required him to get some nephrostomy tubes coming from the kidney, which will take urine out, because we wanted him to get the chemotherapy to feel better, and we had to save the kidneys as well. So he stayed there 2 whole months before he was allowed to leave and go home and come back for treatments.
So when he was allowed to leave and he went home, share that experience, because by this time he would have completed his first round of chemotherapy. Did it seem as though, hope was near?
Oh yes, we were excited. We bought him a whole box of ice cream.
Oh wow!
he's like, Mommy, I need 2 ice cream because I feel so good to be home. And I even have a picture with him holding 2 ice creams because he was so happy to be home.
Right.
And we were like, yes, we are on the path to recovery, because he could not walk. He started to pee himself when he was in the hospital. That's how swollen his tummy was, and it was resting on his spine, so he could not walk. He had to be confined to a bed. So with him being home after all this journey of the chemo, him being not able to move, going through blood work, IVs, and all this, it was like, yes, Lord, thank you, Jesus. Something finally is happening. And, it was excitement all over. The neighbors came and they wished him well. But the only thing was, I'm like, you can't come near to him. Please stay back out there.
Right.
Chemotherapy. And if you have a call, we don't want to catch it over here. So everybody was like standing at the gate and waving, because this mommy was not allowing anybody to come near to her son, not after spending so long in the hospital and just being able to come home.
My next question for you, though, Trudy, was this real, though? Did it really make it better? Did it last?
I would want to say, in everything, you got to have hope. Sometimes it's hard when you see all the things that he has gone through. I mean, pardon me, I'm trying not to,
We understand. It's never easy. It's never easy to see your loved one going through pain, and you are not capable to help. We do understand. Our listeners understand. So
it was a beacon of hope. Right. That much I could say. After seeing him lying there for all these months,
Right.
I mean, after being given this death sentence, and I'm thinking, no, Lord, when are you going to take him from me? Lord, don't take him from me. I was praying. I found my faith when my child got sick, I had to have hope. If I didn't, who was going to? That was my thing. I'm like, I'm his mother. I didn't even think about his dad, because it's like, I'm the one who carried him for 9 months, even though he was a very supportive father. He was there. He took us. He came to the hospital. He would stay, come from work, stay at the hospital, leave the hospital, go back to work. He was very supportive. He was there for us 100%. But for me personally, I'm like, I carried this child for 9 months. If
Right.
I don't have hope, who will?
But
I
then
felt
Trudy,
like, mhm.
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I felt like if I have to move the whole mountain
Right.
just for him to survive, that's exactly what I'm gonna do. Even if I don't know where the money is coming from, I'm gonna find it. If I have to sell every piece of furniture in this house for him to live, that is exactly what I am gonna do. So for me, it was like God just tested my faith. I'm like, God, here is my faith. I'm putting my 100% into this because my child has to live.
But it took a turn for the worst. RASHAUN got ill again.
Yes, he did.
RASHAUN became ill again after
Yeah.
a successful round of chemotherapy. Uh, being such being in such high spirit that hope was near, and he became ill again. Walk us through what happened next.
The chemotherapy was very successful. He started to play again. He was eating again. He got so chubby, his little jaws were rounded up. He was shining. He was glowing.
Mm-hmm.
But then it was time for him to do the surgery. I
Right.
can remember we did it on September 25th. I remember that day.
This
And
September 25th of what year?
2018.
Okay.
Um, I remember after coming from surgery, the surgeon, she spoke to me and she said, we got as much as we could, but there are some that we could not get to. I was like, okay, well, at least you got some, so we can work with that.
Mm-hmm.
So we were looking forward to do radiation, which was basically the final step in my head. That would have been the final step. Um, we started to lobby to get this. It was 2 million Jamaican dollars at the time for the radiation, which was something that we could not afford. So I started to set up a GoFundMe. I have my group of girls who assisted me. These girls, I call them girls because, we're the same age group. So
Right.
they assisted me with setting up a GoFundMe. And as far as I am concerned, we were on our way to recovery.
Mm-hmm.
Lo and behold, after the surgery, the pain would not stop. It's like even days after, the pain was so severe. He
Wow.
cried day, he cried night. I had to walk around with him on my shoulder for him to feel comfort, but that would not ease the pain. I went back to his doctor, his oncologist, and I said to her, the pain is so terrible, he needs something. The only thing they could give him was morphine,
Morphine.
because there was nothing else that could help with the pain. And they were saying, oh, we got to watch him. There were nights when they would give him a painkiller and I would have to go back like minutes after. I said, listen, you have to up the dose because something is not going right. You need to call the doctor. Something is wrong. But, there were telltale signs, like looking back, like he might not make it, but I refuse to believe that he is
What
going to.
were the telltale signs?
He was just crying all the time. He was down. He wasn't as playful because he was feeling pain. He was more clingy,
Mm-hmm.
and we had to wait like 2 weeks after surgery before we could actually even think of doing the radiation. And
Mm-hmm.
I between that time frame after surgery to where we were supposed to do the radiation, I mean, things took a turn for the worse. It's like the cancer just came back with such force. It
Mm-hmm.
just started to spread so rapidly. They told me that it was swollen in the first place. It got swollen again. It was like, I'm going through this again. And but even so, when the doctors called me and said, we're gonna try and get him in ICU just to see what we can do. And when the ICU doctor came, she said, I don't think we could take him in the ICU because he's so swollen. And if we even try to get something in his stomach right now, we might just puncture some of his organs. And she said, there's nothing I could do. And my doctor at the time, she called me and said, this is it. I said, doctor, you must be mad. You must be mad because he has been through this before, even worse than this, and he made it. No, you are wrong. And listen, I'm not afraid to voice my opinion. Like I said, doctor, you are wrong. She said, I'm so sorry, but this time is not gonna make it.
The doctor told you this?
Yeah. And she said, you have to, there is something that we call a DNR. I was like, what the heck is that? But a DNR is do not resuscitate. And she said, you have a choice of signing that paper or not signing that paper. We could work on him until the very last breath. And I was like, doctor, you must be crazy. I mean, are you talking about my child? Are you talking about the same son that I had a couple years ago who was a joy of my life? You're telling me that he's gonna die? You must be crazy. I mean, his dad was the one who kind of grabbed my arm and said to me, not in a bad way, but listen to what the doctors have to say, baby. You just have to listen. And I'm like, I don't want to hear it. He is not dying. But reality kicks in after a while because you are thinking one thing in your head. And when you are looking at the child, look at my son lying on that bed, you could tell. You see that he didn't have much time. And even when he was there in pain, you know, the nurse's aide at the time, she came and she's like, RASHAUN, I'm here to fix you up and tidy you off and take off your dirty clothes. And he was like, yes, nurse. And she said, are you ready for me? He's like, yes, nurse. And when she was done tidying him off, changing his linen from his bed and getting all the dirty stuff away, it was like, thank you, nurse. And the nurse bust out crying. I was like, she's like, even when he's died, he's like such a polite child. Sharleen, I could never express, I don't think, only if you have lost a child that you could understand, really understand what
the feeling was.
Yes, or even how I was feeling. And even so, I always say this to my other friends that I said, I wish no other mother, no other family member would have to feel this pain, this emptiness that you feel with the loss of a child. I wish for everybody to just have their child and they live and bury them, you know, not for you to bury your child. I mean, that's absurd. That's never heard of. That's not in my book. You know, that's not my playbook. I can't even begin to tell you, Sharleen, how I felt, but I had to come to terms. I had to listen to what the doctors were telling me. I had to face reality, and it was a very harsh reality. But I can't even begin to tell you how I did it, because to even it still feels somewhat surreal, like I'm still in that movie. I haven't woken up yet.
Trudy, can you talk to us about that final moment when you realized that the doctors weren't crazy, when you realized that this was indeed the reality for RASHAUN? Is it possible for you to just share with our listeners?
By this time, he was strung up. He had a lot of tubes coming from his he had IVs all over. He had an IV in his leg, he had IVs in his arm because they were giving him fluid, plus he was getting blood. There was a whole lot of things going on. And I had my friend there at the time, a very good friend of mine. She was there. My husband was there, and the nurses, because the staff at the University Hospital Ward 16, they were beautiful. I can tell you that much. And they were all there. They were, the nurses were being very supportive. Even though they were supportive, there was this emptiness, this, you had hope. Even to the last end, you had hope. And the doctor came back to me at the time and she said, we need you to sign this paper or not sign it, to say you want us to resuscitate or not. And I signed it and I said, listen, I looked at him and I saw him looking at me. His eyes were just, he was just staring at me with some eyes that, it was not of pain, but of relief somewhat. And I said to the doctor, I said, I could not resuscitate him if he passed. I said, look at his body. Look at how frail he looked. I'm like, I do not want you to resuscitate him. And it's not because I was not a fighter. It's not because he was not a fighter. It's not because his daddy was not a fighter. We were all fighters, but I could not allow them to further hurt him. As far as where I am concerned, to resuscitate him is gonna hurt him. So we sat there. After I signed that paper, my friend standing beside me, my husband standing beside me. There were nurses surrounding our bed, and the head doctor, he came over to me and he said, Mommy and Daddy, you need to speak to him. He's passing, He can hear you. He might not be able to understand, but he can hear you. And you need to tell him how much you love him. And you need to tell him that you'll see him on the other side, And I just couldn't, I just bent over. I hugged him. I hugged him in my arm and I asked the doctor, I said, could you please remove the IV from his leg? And she did. And I hugged him and I said, Mommy loves you and Daddy loves you too. And Renika loves you and Rachel loves you. I just called all my family members and I said, everybody loves you, baby. Don't worry, you'll be okay. Even though I know he was dying, I had to tell him, I said, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay.
Where we going? Left or right? We are go straight. Yes. Right. Look where you're going. A whole heap of garbage, you said? Oh, you like it? It's good?
Yeah. You wanna get me?
Alright, so down. There you go. Awesome. High five. High five. Me and RASHAUN. Jiville.
Yes.
You like it?
Yeah.
He was 3 when he was diagnosed, 4 when he passed. He spent his last birthday in July and he died in October.
Now, Trudy, it's never easy to lose a loved one. Tell us, what would you, how did you cope? How did you cope with this loss? And what would you say to our listeners who probably have gone through the same thing and is still grieving or is facing a similar situation?
Okay, well, there is no quote unquote step one, step two, step three in
Mm-hmm.
the grief or coping skills. Um, First and foremost, I have to thank God for everything that happened. You know, it might sound cliche somewhat,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, a lot of things that happened could not have been done without, you know, someone upstairs looking out for us.
Right.
And with that being said, my support system
Mm-hmm.
was family, it was friends, it was and it was like a variety of backgrounds because we had counselors, we had doctors, we had um people with spiritual background. So it was a whole bunch of things coming together because I can remember one of my friends coming over to share, you know, our condolences with us. And she said to me, I want to speak to you privately. And I said, okay. Like we went inside my room and she said to me, I want you to learn this breathing exercise. And she taught me a breathing exercise. And I'm like, what is that for? And
Mm-hmm.
she said, there's going to come a time in your grief where you're going to learn how to breathe. You're going to need to breathe like that.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, I laughed at her. No, I really laughed. I'm like, you can't be kidding. You must be kidding me. You cannot be
Mm-hmm.
serious right now. But there
Mm-hmm.
came a time when I felt like I could not breathe, you know, and I have
Mm-hmm.
to remember this breathing exercise just to get through. You have panic attacks. You feel
Mm-hmm.
like you want to get up. You don't want to take a shower. You don't want to eat. It's like your world is crashing down, and not only for you, but
Mm-hmm.
also for my other kids, my other surviving kids, my spouse, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they were traumatized. They were all going through the shock. So
Mm-hmm.
it was hard. We're still grieving, you know, because we still have to deal with that loss. Even so, the children, they all remember what happened because it's not like they were babies who would eventually forget. But
Right.
they're still grieving, you know, and there are times you wanna hug them. That's all you can do. There's nothing you can say to say, okay, it's gonna get better. It
Mm-hmm.
don't get better. It's just like you have to find a way how to push yourself each day. Like, okay, today it's just basic stuff. Today
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna take a shower. A simple thing as a shower and getting dressed is
Mm-hmm.
something you don't want to do. You know, my daughter would come home from school, and as soon as she get to the gate, she would start crying. I
Yeah.
had to take myself out of my grieving and go out there and meet her when she comes to the gate and just start to just hug her as soon as she get to the gate. So there were things. My son started throwing tantrums because he could not express himself as to how he felt at the time. I had to find a way to speak with him. We had counselors coming in. We all got counseling. But, you know, it's just to tell yourself that, God, you know what you did. And it's not okay, but we're going to try to find that, that, that power, that energy, that level of say, okay, we're going to push past it. But it's not really a getting past. You don't forget, but you just cope a little better each day. And with
Mm-hmm.
God's guide, I tell you, it makes it a little bit easier. But it's not something that you could say, okay, step one, you're gonna get up and today you're gonna go. No, it doesn't work that like that because there's no time limit on grief, you know.
Mm-hmm.
It
Mm-hmm.
does, you have to just take it step
Step
by
at a
step, deal with it as it comes, and do not be afraid to cry.
time. Mm-hmm.
Feel like you can't go, okay,
Mm-hmm.
take the time and say, okay, today I'm not going, but maybe tomorrow will be a better day.
I bet
But
you did.
I find that is not, I don't wallow. I try
Mm-hmm.
to my emotions at times, but I don't wallow. Maybe it's a good thing, it's a bad thing. Sometimes it comes back to haunt me, but that's how I deal, because I have my other kids who are depending on me, and I have to be strong for them as well.
This is 3 years after his passing, and you're still grieving. I heard you said that you're still grieving. It still has not gotten 100% better.
Right.
Do you think it ever will?
No, I don't think it ever will. No. You cannot forget 9 months, you know, Karen. You can never forget the birth of that child. You can never forget the impact he made on others. You can never forget the journey per se. That's something you will never, ever forget. And there are moments when we smiled. There are moments when we played. There are moments when we cried. But never, ever forget what happened.
You spoke a lot about your support system, and so it is important for persons who might be facing the same type of challenge, to have a very good support system in order to cope with what is happening.
That is so, yes. I recommend, this is something I truly recommend, because I had different support systems, because for different things, it's just like you have a doctor for every ailment,
Right.
Because at the hospital, I had other mothers there who were going through similar situations, but they understood more than I did, and they found it, deep in their heart, even though they were grieving too and going through trauma, they found it in their heart to say, come. They took me under their wings and said, listen, this is what you need to do. This is what you need to know. Even with nutrition, they said, listen, you have to change what you eat. Remember, we always said they are children. They can eat whatever junk they want to eat because they'll burn it off. But with cancer, you have to watch what you eat, So I had a support system at the hospital. I had friends of my own who stood beside me. I had family support system, because even with being at the hospital, you need your family to stay with other kids, make sure they're going to school, make sure that they're clean, they eat, you have that. I have a spiritual support system, because even though you're going through this, as I said, I found my spirituality when my son got sick. So I had people from church who would pray with me, who would come and said, listen, God loves you just the same. Even sometimes just to hear God loves you would cheer you up all day. They would call on phone, they would talk to RASHAUN, they would pray with him, even though he kind of understood what prayer was. And we would say, God don't like children who misbehave and stuff like that. And he would, even sometimes, he would be the one to say, Mom, it's prayer time. Because I wasn't that spiritual person at that time. But then we adopted that spirituality to say, okay, there is a higher power, and we have to surrender to it. So your support system is very, very important, even for your own mental. Some people think that you're okay because the child is okay, but there are a lot of things going through your head, and you need to release at some point, and you don't want to in front of your children. Sometimes even your spouse you don't want to cry in front of. And I can say that he came because he saw that I was at the hospital 24/7. I did not go home. And there were times he came and I didn't want to leave, and he said to me, listen, if it's only to go and take a walk and come back, go take a break, I had him too as a support system for a while, because remember too, he was grieving just as
well.
Yes. So he was there for a while just to lean on, and to kind of draw me back to reality at times, and say, listen, you shake off yourself, man. You need to come again, go revamp, and that kind of thing. But your support system.
Trudy, I must say thank you. I know it was painful. We heard the pain in your voice. I must say thank you for choosing the Inspirational Saturdays show to share this very, very painful yet powerful story with our listeners. It's never easy.
Thank you for having me, Sharleen, and all the best to you too.
Listeners, we have come to the end of yet another Inspirational Saturdays show. See you next week. Same time, same place, different story.